Go to Joe 303.
Tomorrow's Superstars Tuesday.
Is that the stable genius saying that?
30330. My name's Joe Biden. I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate. How many unsafe bridges you still have here in the state of Iowa? And
This is a guy who doesn't know what he's doing.
We choose truth over facts.
We'll see who's sleepy.
I'm not going nuts. 30330.
We hold these truths to be self-evident.
All men and women created by the go. You know the thing.
All right, Chuck. Thank you very much.
All right. It's Chris, but anyway.
I got started out on HBCU. No mistake. Why? Oh, you're getting nervous, man.
I just did Chris. No, I just did Chuck.
30330.
Around the nation, TYT Nation, Jeff Waldorf here with you. Welcome to the show today. So, look, we got a tough show today. So, we're going to be talking about, of course, updates to the Democratic primary, or I should say the end of the Democratic primary. Or is it? Oh, where's that twist? It's coming. We're going to talk about that. We have, of course, Donald Trump trying to get Bernie supporters. That is destined to fail, at least in some regard. So I'll, of course, will explain how that could be kind of successful. So there's that. Then we've got, of course, Donald Trump going after voting by mail. We've got Brian Kilmeade saying, hey, Wisconsin voting out in the middle of a pandemic, I applaud them for making that decision. That's insane. And then we'll talk about the Democratic plan to help essential workers. So we'll talk about that. But like today, again, this is a super tough day. I know a lot of you guys have caught some feelings. Hey, we're all catching feelings here today. And so, like, I understand there's a lot of not only anger, but a lot of sadness as well. And so, we'll address that. Before we get started, please like and share the stream so that more people can see it. Very important that you do so. Helps us out greatly. Another way to help the show, of course, is to use the Super Chat. We need your help more than ever. Progressive media, indie media, we are literally on the ropes. And so it's not just me. It's all independent media. We have been crushed. Let's just say that, right? And a progressive movement really hinges on getting out the message. And we know mainstream media is not going to get out our message. Mainstream media is opposed to our message. They hate us. And so what we need to do is we need to build up independent progressive media so that we can actually fight on more even playing field. Because guess what? Playing field is not even. The playing field is not like we are not fighting in a battle of parity, right? There is a massive media advantage going towards the establishment. And so we need to build up independent progressive media to actually be able to compete with the CNNs and the MSNBCs for the world. And so we need to be able to do that. We need your guys' help. Patreon.com/TYDNation. Like, the progressive movement really has to come together and support our media, because we ain't got no billionaires on our side. In fact, the billionaires are not on our side. They're on the other side. We're fighting against the billionaires. And so we need all of you. All right. Thank you, Elwell. I do appreciate that. Yeah. So, by the way, some of you are reporting that you're getting Trump ads. We don't control the ads. YouTube controls that. We're helped by ads. So, hey, if Donald Trump, if a Trump ad shows on my video, I get paid for it. I'm taking Trump's money. I'm taking Trump's money to call him an idiot. And so that's actually awesome. I love it. All right. So anyway, I guess we should get to the first story here. And again, not good. Very bad. So today, Bernie Sanders has officially suspended his campaign for president. So that, of course, I think is a major loss for the United States, a major loss for the progressive movement, a major loss for the world. That's my opinion. And you guys already know. A lot of you share that opinion. I think that Bernie Sanders was pretty much our last hope for right now. And so right now, the progressive movement is stuck. It's stuck. And we're going to spin our wheels for a little bit. And that's really unfortunate now that we have basically Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. So now I'm going to read here from an article from The Intercept written by Ryan Grimm. So now he says, Sanders' departure from the race comes a day after the state of Wisconsin went forward with a controversial in-person election. So now, look, Bernie Sanders called for that to be postponed. Turns out the Democratic Party of Wisconsin also called for that to be postponed. Experts, medical experts, a lot of people called for this election to be postponed. They did not. That is an illegitimate election. It's illegitimate because of the levels of voter suppression that were out there. Again, I reported that Milwaukee had only 5 polling places open. Normally they have 180 open. So look, that was an illegitimate election. It's not as if the results matter now, but they do. What matters is that people were forced to either exercise their fundamental right to vote and possibly get sick and die from it. And so that's one of the big problems, right? And so look, Ryan Grimm, getting back to that article, he kind of breaks down what happened where Bernie Sanders' fortunes began to change because originally at first he actually started out as a front runner. He won some contests in, of course, Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada. That was very decisive, but got stopped in South Carolina. You had, of course, Jim Clyburn endorsing Joe Biden, and then you had Bloody Monday. And so that's when, of course, Mayo Pete, Amy Klobuchar, and all the establishment. And what's interesting about Mayor Pete is that he had a double-digit lead over Joe Biden, and he dropped out. Of course, we know that Pete had sat in on these so-called Stop Sanders meetings, right? So where the establishment was agonizing over a possible Bernie Sanders win of him running away with Super Tuesday states. And so after South Carolina, where Joe Biden did very, very well with older African-American voters, thanks in part to that gigantic endorsement by Clyburn, they all dropped and threw their weight behind Joe Biden and propped him up. And he won and he dominated Super Tuesday. And since he did really well in the primary afterwards as well, after Super Tuesday, because he gained momentum, had a big victory in Florida, and outperformed, of course, Bernie Sanders in states where Bernie Sanders won in 2016. And so, look, the media got behind Joe Biden, obviously, and so did the establishment. They coalesced around him, and that's what happened. And so, following those victories, Joe Biden had momentum. Bernie Sanders didn't. He was behind by several hundred delegates. And it was a very difficult path to get to the nomination. Difficult, but not impossible. But Sanders said he met with his supporters. Some of them were split. You had people like Larry Cohen telling Bernie Sanders stay in the race. You had Nina Turner telling him to stay in the race, but you had Faz Shakir saying no, it's time to drop out. And so, I mean, there was those divisions, and at the end of the day, Bernie Sanders, I think because he didn't want any more, elections like Wisconsin, where people, were told by Joe Biden, go out, if you feel safe, go out and vote. Where of course Bernie Sanders was against that, and saying no, you should stay home, and you should protect yourself, you should protect your family, and not go out and vote. And so I think that's one of the major factors in him dropping out, is saying I don't want to put any more of our voters in danger. So look, there you go. So now, what's interesting is that Bernie Sanders, while he has suspended his campaign, his name's going to be on the ballot. He's going to continue to accrue delegates. And the only thing that's changed is he's not going to campaign. So look, if you want to, he's still on the ballot in New York and in the rest of these primary states that have yet to be able to cast their ballot. You can still vote for him. Why not? Right? Yeah, he's not actively campaigning. And look, maybe that presents a small window where he could get enough delegates to have some sort of sway in the upcoming convention in Milwaukee. That's postponed until August. A lot of primaries are postponed. We're in the middle of a pandemic, COVID-19, the coronavirus. And so who knows, right? And so, look, the thing about Sanders, too, is his policies have been gaining a lot of support. And so if he has a lot of leverage at the convention with the popular support of Medicare for All, that's gained a gigantic increase in popularity since COVID-19. Look, who knows what's going to happen at that convention? It'll probably be a virtual convention, but you're going to have a lot of people that are now out of work that'll look at Joe Biden and say, well, look, Bernie Sanders, he's got that many delegates. He's got a lot of sway. His, policies are incredibly popular. Joe, what are you going to do? Are you going to change your position on these? I don't know. I don't know if he will. I don't think that he will personally. There's no evidence to suggest that he is going to change his position. But the voters can put a lot of pressure on that. Can put a lot of pressure on Biden now. And now it's really up to Joe Biden. And no matter whatever Joe Biden's, supporters, people like Alyssa Milano or whatever say, the onus is on Biden's team now. Because here's the thing. A lot of Bernie Sanders supporters are not Democrats. Okay. And this is something that the establishment doesn't quite understand. You have a lot of people that voted in support of Bernie Sanders. They joined the Democratic Party, but they're not Democrats, right? They only joined the Democratic Party to vote for and support Bernie Sanders because they believe not just in him, right? But they believe in the policies. And so the policies are what has always mattered to these voters. They don't care about the person. They care about the policies, but Bernie Sanders has been right on these policy positions. He's been right on Medicare for All, especially now, right? Where you see how inadequate our healthcare system is and how disastrous tying your health insurance to your employer actually really is. It's a complete and utter disaster. And so, those policies, these voters think, yes, this is what's important. It's always been about the policies. It's never been about the person. It's always been about the movement. I am not tied to any sort of political party. So Biden, the onus is on him to make a case for those people because they are not going to line up behind him. He's going to have the same problem Hillary Clinton voters had in 2016. How do you get those people that are independents, that are apolitical voters, to go and vote blue, because it's not enough. And here's the other thing, right? So one of the biggest centrist retorts that I see all the time. Well, the voters rejected Bernie Sanders, so why should we have to line up behind his policy proposals? Here's the thing: the Democratic Party voters rejected Bernie Sanders. That is very, very clear, right? That you just had more people voting for Joe Biden over Bernie Sanders. That is a mathematical fact. Now, that doesn't mean that the people overall reject Bernie Sanders, because I was talking about in the other video when I was talking about Joe Rogan, is that you have two different pools of voters. You have Democratic primary voters, and then you have general election voters. General election voters are mainly more independents or people who make up their mind at the last moment, right? I don't think Joe's going to be able to reach those people. I think he's going to have a very, very difficult time reaching those who are independent, progressive, that don't necessarily line up with any sort of political party. And so it's on him to try to make a case. And I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do so. And that's what I'm worried about. I am very concerned about his ability to reach out. And not just concerned about his ability, if he even understands that that's what he needs to do. Because the problem with the Democratic Party, and this is a problem that we saw with Hillary Clinton, is that you have that hubris that's built in. Don't worry, we don't really need that. No, we're just going to go with, Democratic partisans, and we're going to rely on maybe getting Republican moderate voters, the Jennifer Rubins and the Rick Wilsons of the world. Those guys, they'll back us up. We don't need progressives. No, we don't need the Bernie bro voters. No, we don't need the. We'll do fine reaching out to moderate Republicans. I think that that's not going to be an effective strategy. Now, look, I could be wrong, but reality has endorsed Bernie Sanders. Let's just say that. And the reality no longer fits we have to take it very, very slow. We have to do incremental change. No, reality has not backed that at all. And so it's going to be very interesting to see if the Biden camp, now that Bernie Sanders is out, will be able to adapt to that. The other thing about Biden that is a problem here is, lack of leadership, right? And so now that Bernie Sanders is out of the race, Joe Biden doesn't have to do any debates. And will we see him disappear until the general election, or even during the general election? That's the other thing that I'm afraid of. So now the media has hidden Joe Biden essentially, ever since those wins on Super Tuesday. And after the March 15th debate, they've kind of been playing, hide the Biden. Well, now what's going to happen? Well, the general election, you can't hide Joe Biden. And every day, Donald Trump is going out and doing his briefings. And now, look, the media is starting to say, I guess we don't really need to cover that. But now you're going to have to, because Donald Trump will be bringing out those arguments against Joe Biden. He's already been talking about Joe Biden's mental decline, calling him Sleepy Joe, right? Sleepy Joe Biden. There's numerous videos going around of Joe Biden not being able to hold a coherent thought or have a conversation, right? You've got the sexual assault allegations from Tara Reade that the Biden campaign has not addressed, has not even done any sort of investigation on. We're going to hear about that. We're going to hear about Burisma. We're going to hear about Hunter Biden. We're going to hear about, Ukraine. We're going to hear about Hunter Biden getting, allegedly getting millions of dollars from China. We're going to hear all about that stuff. And so that's a problem. Jup James in the chat, by the way, says this. If Biden will mentally collapse, Hillary will take over. I don't think so. And that gets back to what I was talking about earlier. Bernie's still on, technically, he's still on the ballot. You can suspend a campaign and you can unsuspend a campaign. I'm not saying that this is what Bernie Sanders is doing, but by still leaving yourself on the ballot and telling people you can still go out and vote. My name's still on the ballot. I'm still there. I'm still accruing delegates. If Biden somehow drops off, Bernie Sanders is still there. He's still got the second amount, the second most amount of delegates. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that is there. Is it a long shot? Absolutely. I'm not trying to delude you guys at all. But boy, is that a possibility? Oh yeah, it's a possibility. So yes, he has suspended his campaign, but he is still there, and he's still, in a way, not he's no longer having to campaign, but he's still there. So I don't know. We'll see. But look, the last part I guess I want to address is how, look, the movement, as I've mentioned before, is not about us, right? That's literally not me, us. Now, Bernie Sanders, whether or not he's going to continue to have a role, a prominent role in this movement, in the future, this is his last run for presidency. That's pretty much over. Okay. What's going to happen now? Well, I mean, what's going to happen is we're going to continue to fight for the policies. The torch will be passed to someone else. There's already been talk about it being, Nina Turner. But who knows, right? We have the next generation progressives. We've got Rashida Tlaib. We've got, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We've got people like Ro Khanna. We've got a lot of progressives that are running down ticket in this election. Cory Bush. And so, look, we have all of this that is still here. What we don't have is just a figurehead, right? So Bernie Sanders, I mean, it's basically counting on us to actually continue the movement for progressive values. And what we need to continue that movement is strong media. I think the media is probably the biggest, most effective reason that Bernie Sanders could not win a Democratic primary, could not win over the partisan Democratic voters. And so and look, he did not win those voters, but he does win on policy. And that's what's really important, because you saw in all of these states that it had exit polls, which was all of them, Bernie Sanders' ideas, Medicare for all, wins out over having private insurance. And so he's got the policies. It's just they didn't vote for the person. I believe they voted for someone who they believed, thanks to the media, could actually beat Donald Trump. And so media is our biggest obstacle. And we need to fight against the media that much harder to grow our own media, our own progressives, our own progressive media. And look, Mike Figueroa over the Humanist Report is saying something similar, right? You have Aaron Cousins over at Ring of Fire saying the same thing, right? We've got to grow independent media, and independent media has to support candidates, but the candidates also who get into power, progressive candidates, need to support independent media. And so that's what needs to happen. We need to really think about long-term how to grow a bigger progressive network. And right now, we are not big enough to take on establishment media. We know that already. We're not, obviously we're way too small. We don't have the kind of reach that we need to reach progressives and to reach regular people. And so we need a bigger network. That's what we need. That's the first step. Build up progressive media, build up progressive challengers so that we can continue that message. And what Bernie Sanders started will continue. And even though it's a heartbreaking loss today, I mean, a reporter, a friend of mine, friend of the show, Emma Vigeland, she broke down talking about, Bernie Sanders and his effect, because what he did is that he brought these policies out into the light. He talked about these policies and he really made them more mainstream. And so we need to continue that movement and really push those ideas, because again, it's never been about the person. It's always been about the policies, and the policies are what matter the most, along with, of course, us, regular people fighting for those policies. And we need to continue that fight. And we are going to continue that fight. I know I am certainly not giving up on these policies, and you guys shouldn't either. You shouldn't give up the fight. It's only just begun. We will win. The force and tide of history is on our side today, and we know that. And so let's get out there. Let's keep fighting for those policies, holding our politicians accountable, and never, ever, ever give up. We will beat the establishment, and we will win on policy. All right, that was a little longer than I thought it would be, but let's move on. Let's go to Trump's response. Oh shit! All right, hold on here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick break to fix something, or I'm at least going to try, and we'll be right back.
Mike Pounds.
All right. Welcome back. So let's move on to the next story. So earlier today, Senator Bernie Sanders announced that he is suspending his campaign for president. And almost immediately, Donald Trump made a pitch to his supporters. So now let me go to Twitter here. He says, Bernie Sanders is out. Thank you to Elizabeth Warren. If not her, Bernie would have won almost every state on Super Tuesday. This ended just like the Democrats and the DNC wanted, same as the crooked Hillary fiasco. The Bernie people should come to the Republican Party. Trade. All right, so I have some thoughts about this immediately. First things first, I believe that Donald Trump should go eat a bag of fake phallus-shaped objects. There is no way in hell I would ever vote for Donald Trump, right? I wouldn't, or anybody in the Republican Party. So I think I should be very, very clear about that. Okay, so what Donald Trump doesn't understand, or can't understand, refuses to understand, whatever, is that we don't support Bernie Sanders because of Bernie Sanders, right? No, we supported Bernie Sanders because of the policy. Medicare for all, Green New Deal, $15 minimum wage or living wage, and racial, social, and environmental justice, right? Economic, racial, social, and environmental justice. Okay? So the Republican Party, they stand for none of that. They are literally the anti-Bernie. So no, I'm not going to vote for somebody who doesn't support those policies. It's always been about policy. And so look, I understand that there are a lot of people who have caught feelings today. I've caught feelings, a lot of us, and there's a lot of anger. And there's a definite desire to punish the Democratic Party for, basically screwing over Bernie Sanders. I understand that there's that desire. I also understand that a lot of Bernie Sanders voters are not Democrats, never were Democrats to begin with. And so there's that, right? And so Bernie Sanders got those voters. Joe Biden and the Democratic Party are not going to get those voters. So understand when they come back later on, if Joe Biden sinks like the Titanic, right? Iceberg dead ahead. Well, we've been warning about the iceberg. We warned about the iceberg when it came to 2016, that election. And we see an iceberg now, right? It's the SS Joe is going to crash into that gigantic iceberg. And I don't know if there's anything that's going to be able to stop that. So understand, though, that when they come back and blame us later, when SS Joe sinks off the coast of Trump land, right? That Bernie Sanders, the Bernie bros, right? That there was those 10%, 12% of Bernie voters, whatever, that were never going to vote for Joe Biden to begin with. And that some, yes, like Joe Rogan, the apolitical center, we're never going to vote for Joe Biden, but we're willing to cross over to vote for Bernie Sanders. There was those Trump voters that were willing to cross over to vote for Bernie Sanders. Now he is no longer an option. Yes, he is still on the ballot. So understand, Bernie Sanders is still on the ballot in the next 26 states, right? Those primaries haven't happened. They will still happen. Bernie Sanders suspends his campaign, which means he could unsuspend his campaign, right? So there's that, right? So if you're somebody who's not in favor of Joe Biden, you live in New York, you can still vote for Bernie Sanders. He's still on the ballot. Bernie Sanders can still accrue delegates. But effectively he has suspended his campaign, not ended his campaign. He has not released any of his delegates. So, if you're going to vote for somebody, you can still vote for Bernie Sanders. And that's really up to you. I've already voted. Joe Biden was not going to earn my vote anyway. I think he needs to address the sexual assault allegations. His campaign needs to get some substance, needs to take some progressive policy positions. If not, you're not going to earn those voters who are not already Democrats. And so there's that, right? Right now, we're in unprecedented times. Tweaking Obamacare and maybe doing a public option is never going to be enough, right? Because coronavirus has laid bare the weaknesses of a for-profit healthcare system. Everybody can see the weaknesses, right? The weaknesses in this economy under business as usual, the so-called normal that Joe Biden wants to get back to, well, we already see the weaknesses in that. We cannot go back to that normal. We can't. Normal is impossible. We cannot afford normal. And so I'm very concerned that voters who were swayed by that message earlier in the primary, hey, look, Joe Biden's a vote for normal. So we can go back to the Obama years, right? Well, look, that's not going to happen. I think they've made a terrible mistake. But look, you have the primary that's effectively over. I am afraid that Biden's going to disappear. You're going to leave Donald Trump with control of the narrative in this election. And they've already shown that. They've already taken control of that narrative. The Republicans have. They've been talking about Biden's cognitive decline. You're going to have the media that's going to start talking about that. Mainstream media, because now that Bernie Sanders is, effectively suspended his campaign, they're going to turn their fire on Joe. You've got the credible sexual assault allegations from Tara Reid that he has not addressed, that his campaign hasn't addressed. And so that's the problem, right? Look, Trump's going to bring those up. He's going to bring up the sexual assault allegations. I can guarantee it. But you might say, well, wait a minute. Donald Trump has more sexual assault allegations against him. Yes, he does. Absolutely, he does. But the one thing that Donald Trump is missing is any kind of shame. He has no shame. And so he's going to attack Biden on those allegations. He's going to attack Biden on the cognitive decline, even though Donald Trump himself has his own cognitive decline. So we're basically in the worst case scenario position again, except now we have a global pandemic. which has kind of changed the game. So I don't know what's going to happen. I do know we're presented with that Hobson's choice again. We've got, the Democratic Party has to choose between a lesser rapist and a greater rapist. Oh, great. Wonderful. So that's what we have. And we have a repeat of 2016. And look, that's the unfortunate reality that we find ourselves in. We were warning you. We talked about this just like in 2016, and we are basically back to it. And so it's not a threat. It's a reality. There are Bernie supporters that will go and either not vote for Trump or, not vote for Biden and just not vote. Or there will be Bernie supporters that will go and vote for Donald Trump. And those supporters understand that they will not be vote shamed because they were never Democrats to begin with. And so I really wonder how Joe Biden is going to appeal to the ones, who are not Democrats. He's got to start willing, really be willing to reach out and to have a message that will bring those people that were never part of the Democratic Party into the Democratic Party. And so, I don't understand what he's going to do now. I don't see how Joe Biden and his team don't understand that he has to do a major amount of outreach. We don't know. And that's what that's the scariest part of this entire thing is now it's basically the election is in Joe Biden's hands. And oh boy. Yeah. All right, moving on here. So let's go from Joe to Trump. President Donald Trump thinks voting by mail is a pretty bad idea, except when he does it.
So you were highly critical of mail-in voting, mail-in ballots for voting.
I think mail-in voting is
but
horrible.
You voted by
It's
mail
corrupt.
in Florida's election last month, didn't you?
Sure, I could vote by mail for that.
How do you reconcile
Because I'm
that?
allowed to. Well, that's called out of state. You know why I voted? Because I happen to be in the White House and I won't be able to go to Florida to vote.
What's the difference between mailing within
well, there's a
state or
big
mailing
difference
outside the
between
state?
somebody that's out of state and does a ballot and everything sealed, certified, and everything else. You see what you have to do with the certifications.
I mean, look, vote by mail. Horrible, corrupt, but I'm allowed to do it, so I did it. And but look, I'd go through all these certifications. Well, so does everybody else. Okay, look. He's got a good reason to do it, yes, because he was in Washington and he lives in Florida now. But you know what? Everybody else who does a mail-in ballot also has a good reason to do it. I mean, it's kind of the point, especially in the middle of a coronavirus, right? Where, people are social distancing and they should to avoid having to go to the polls. Again, that's a good idea. That's a good reason to have mail-in voting. Kind of the point. But Trump is going to go on. He's going to explain why he's totally against this and why it's good for him, but not for you.
Thousands and thousands of people sitting in somebody's living room signing ballots all over the place. No, I think that mail-in voting is a terrible thing. I think if you vote, you should go. And even the concept of early voting is not the greatest because a lot of things happen. But it's okay. But you should go and you should vote. I think you should go and you should vote. You look at what they do where they grab thousands of mail-in ballots and they dump it. I'll tell you what, and I don't have to tell you, you can look at the statistics. There's a lot of dishonesty going along with mail-in voting, mail-in ballot.
Okay. Wow. Thousands of people, you guys. They're in their living rooms. They're signing ballots. No, that's not a thing. That's not a thing that totally happens. Especially with a highly contagious disease going around. I mean, look, even without that threat, that's not really something that happens. Now, there are election experts, and let's actually go to the experts, right? Who do say, yes, on the issue of fraud, there's a little bit more, slightly more fraud when it comes to in-mail voting than in-person voting, which is infinitesimally small as it is. In fact, there was a study that found that out of the 197 million votes cast for federal candidates between 2002 and 2005, only 40 voters were indicted for voter fraud. Only 26 of those cases, about 0.0000013% of the votes cast resulted in convictions of voter fraud. I mean, that's really small. Now, with in-mail voting, it might go up to 0.0000025%. Oh no! Disaster! 45 people maybe have gotten in-person voter fraud or mail-in fraud. Sorry. Look, it is infinitesimally small numbers, right? And by the way, Donald Trump says that, there's going to be so much fraud. They're going to sit here and they're going to do all that, and it's not good. It's corrupt, right? Well, those same experts said that you can do mail-in voting very safely and securely. And they also point out that election fraud is very rare in all those instances. Where there is fraud in the system, according to Lana Atkinson, a political science professor at the University of New Mexico, it really seems to be in mail-in balloting. There's not a lot. I think there's a little bit. All right, so what can be done? States can implement things like ballot tracking, as well as prepaid postage, and ballot drop boxes, which eliminate the need for voters to hand over their ballots to a third party, and therefore preventing the situation that Trump talks about, known as ballot harvesting. Okay. That said, the thing about Trump is that he's really not afraid of voter fraud, right? No, what he's afraid of, he spells out in this interview.
The things they had in there were crazy. They had things, levels of voting that if you ever agreed to it, you'd never have a Republican elected in this country again.
Yeah. There would be a lever vote of voting in which Republicans could never win again. I can't have that. Now, look, it's generally known that the more people that turn out, the less Republicans win. And why? It's because Republicans are deeply unpopular. The party is deeply unpopular. And that's why we have levels of voter suppression. That's why it's tougher to vote. That's why you see huge lines in minority areas, less polling places, more hoops to jump through. All of that is designed to suppress the vote so that people will either say, well, it's too tough, right? There's too much to do. I don't have time for that. I got a job to go to. Who's going to watch my kids while I go and stand in line for 2 hours in order to vote? No. Voting by mail is a smart thing to do if you want to increase voter turnout. But these Republicans, they don't want to increase voter turnout because, as they have admitted in many different circumstances or many different instances, that they win when less people show up. And that's it. And look, making voting easier, I think it's always been an important issue. But now it should be in the forefront because we're in the middle of a pandemic. We should definitely make voting easier and safer. Going out in person right now, like in Wisconsin and Florida, we're going to have grave consequences. And I mean, people going to their graves because they were forced to brave the COVID-infested wasteland in order to vote for their representation. There were very important elections in Wisconsin, the judgeships, right, that Republicans wanted to win. And they're willing to sacrifice the lives of their voters in order to win those elections. And it is absolutely sickening. As for Trump, attacking something that he used himself in mail voting it's just the height of his hypocrisy. Ridiculous. All right. Anyway, so let's go to more sick, ridiculous people. Brian Kilmeade.
Ladies and gentlemen, what's the big deal? Keep your social distance, wear your gloves, have election workers take care of everything sanitary, and get used to it. This is the way it's going to be. We're going to incrementally get back to normal. I salute Wisconsin for doing it.
That was Fox News host Brian Kilmeade being absolutely thrilled with the idea that a lot of voters in Wisconsin will probably get sick and die because Republicans in the state court decided it would be awesome to hold an election in the middle of a pandemic. But hey, guys, what's the big deal? Now get out there and die. I mean, look, the coronavirus is airborne. And so your masks and gloves are not really going to help all that much. And yes, you want people to social distance, but then you have thousands of people getting crammed into fewer and fewer polling places. For example, Milwaukee normally has 180 polling places. You know how many was open yesterday? 5. You had thousands of people that were lined up around the block waiting to vote, but you had the state conservative court saying, we don't really care. No. We also had the Supreme Court saying that we're not going to extend absentee ballots. And so literally it was either your vote or your life. But of course, they don't care about that, right? You had Republicans out there. This is a short video, right, of Republican Speaker Robin Vos going out there and telling voters, while dressed up in full PPE, that it's totally safe to vote.
You are incredibly safe to go.
Oh, you're incredibly safe to go vote. Well, then why do you look like you're going to perform surgery? If you have to dress up and look like that, then it's not totally safe to vote. Now, he also said, they gave us PPE. It is mandatory for us to wear. Gee, I wonder why. So we're here today making sure that we do everything safely. Everybody's here safe. They have very minimal exposure. Actually, there's less exposure here than you would get if you went to the grocery store, if you went to Walmart, or if you did any of the many things we have to do to live in the state of Wisconsin. You're incredibly safe to go out. So I think that's why people have to use their own best judgment. They have to make sure that if they're compromised in any way or worried about the safety of their family, that they do it really smartly. Yeah, you know what smartly is? Staying home. That's what being smart is. Self-quarantine. If you feel sick, you should self-quarantine. And if you don't want to get sick, you should stay home and minimize travel and contact with other people. But yet the Republicans are like, no, it's fine. It's fine. Go out and vote. Oh, me? I'm just dressed like this. I'm just being safe. Now, I also love the excuse, right? The grocery store is less safe. And you're still going to the Walmart. Well, yeah, food's necessary to life. That's why people risk themselves, because you have to go and eat. You don't have to vote to survive. So it's sort of a ridiculous comparison. There was no need to hold the election on that day. Simple as that. But again, here's the thing. Now, Kilmeade talks about, we're going to incrementally return back to normal. I don't want to return to normal. Normal sucks. We actually need better than the normal, which was characterized by immense greed, profiteering, putting profit and power over human lives. That's the normal that Kilmeade says, and I hope it doesn't happen. What we need is a new normal, right? Where people like Kilmeade have absolutely no power, and Republicans are treated like thugs. You know why? Because they are thugs. They don't care about human lives. Their own voters are being treated as a sacrifice in order to maintain their own power. These are not good people. These are bad people. And so, especially since they're eagerly blocking other forms of voting that don't involve showing up. They refuse to do the vote by mail. because they know if they did, they would lose. As more people vote, the chance of Republicans being elected goes down. So this is a perfect time for them to suppress the vote, especially when it comes to the other side who actually does believe in science and believes in medicine and believes in news, whereas their side generally doesn't and decides, well, I'm going to go out, I'm going to endanger myself, I'm going to endanger my family, I'm going to endanger other people in order to help Republicans get more power. It is literally a sacrifice for their own power, these politicians. And it's absolutely gross. Okay. Let me just take out the trash here. And we'll get going with the rest of the show. With the economy still being incredibly bad for millions of Americans, of course, lost their jobs due to the downturn over coronavirus. You have Senate Democrats that are working on another plan to try to rescue some of these workers, especially ones who are currently on the front line. So now, Senate Democrats have released a proposal on Tuesday that would boost the pay of essential workers. As much as $25,000 in hazard pay would be afforded over a period of time to people deemed essential. That includes employees in healthcare, drugstores, grocery stores, sanitation workers, truck drivers, transportation workers, and all federal employees with frontline positions, such as postal service workers. So now, that's the Democratic proposal. So what that would do is it would be equivalent of a raise to $13 an hour, so close, and would apply retroactively from the start of the health crisis emergency on January 27th until the end of the year. So that's according to Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. So that would be, again, $13 an hour. Now, I think that they should have a living wage, and I think it shouldn't be just temporary. So that's one of the big problems I see with this already. It's a half measure. We're going to give them an emergency for, $13 an hour, not quite a living wage, and only for a predetermined amount of time. That sucks. Is it better than nothing? Yes. Are we going to get more than crumbs from the Democrats? No. And that's sad. That's why it sucks to have Democrats that won't actually fight. But let me go to where they talk about healthcare workers. Healthcare workers would also receive a one-time premium of up to $15,000 as part of a program to recruit and retain certain medical employees in fields experiencing shortages. The benefits would again be applied retroactively for those already working on the front lines and to the families of healthcare workers who have died as a result of coronavirus. Now, the proposal is dubbed the Heroes Fund, and it's being led by Senator Chuck Schumer, Patty Murray of Washington, Bob Casey of Pennsylvania, Tom Udall of New Mexico, and Gary Peters of Michigan. Now, essential workers not part of the healthcare recruitment program who earn less than $200,000 per year would receive a maximum premium pay of $25,000, while those who make more than $200,000 would get a maximum of $5,000. The extra pay would apply through December 31st, or until the worker salary-based maximum premium pay is reached. So now, this sounds like, oh, hey, look, Heroes Fund, right? So we're going to give you, this money, these bonuses in this hazard pay for being on the front lines. But there comes another problem. The federal funds would be distributed to employers. Oh, great. Yeah. Oh, so we're going to give the corporations this money and hope that they dole it out to their employees. Ridiculous. Now, this would be distributed to employers, like I said, who would need to apply for the money for its employees. So it would be, again, dependent on the employer to not only sign up, but also to fairly distribute those funds. And by the way, we have no idea what federal agency would be responsible for distributing the resources. So, oh, look, we're going to give a bunch of money to these corporations that sign up and hope that they do the right thing and give it to their workers with probably little oversight. God damn it. Here we go with the Democrats. I mean, seriously, how bad of a proposal is this? Like, I understand, like, oh, it's the Heroes Fund, right? We're going to give them $13 an hour, and we're going to give some people some money, but we're going to give it to the corporations and hope that they do the right thing. Why don't you just give it to the people? I don't understand why you don't just have, for example, Bernie Sanders' proposal, which is to give $2,000 guaranteed to every person. Not only that, but also to guarantee healthcare. There's nothing about healthcare in this. Right now, there are people that are working in the front lines in these grocery stores that are getting sick, that are dying. They do not have healthcare. So they get sick, they don't have health insurance. They either rack up a gigantic bill of anywhere from $10,000 to $70,000 or more, or they die, and they still rack up money. You know, how is this going to help them? Again, here we have another milquetoast. And by the way, calling it the Heroes Act. No, they're not heroes. They're sacrificial lambs for capitalism. Look, these workers, yes, I appreciate everything they do. And you know what? I want to fight for them to get a living wage, not just during an emergency, and all the time. A living wage and Medicare for all. That's what they deserve because they're human beings and they have human rights. Not this milquetoast BS. What is this? And you know what? It's probably still not going to even pass the Senate because of Republicans and Donald Trump. Ridiculous. But again, that's what we have. Those are our Democratic leaders in the Senate. Great. A little frustrating today, but it's been hasn't been the greatest day, but nonetheless, look, that's all I got for you guys. I'm going to end a couple minutes early. I want to thank you all for watching. Please like and share the stream. Keep coming back because we've got a long fight ahead of us. We need every one of you guys to help grow this platform, to grow this show. We're going to take on corporate media. We're going to take on the CNN and MSNBCs of the world. We're going to take on the political establishment, but we need your help to do it. We've got to get bigger. We've got to grow, and we need your help to do it. We need funding, and we need people to spread the word as much as you can. All right, that's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation. Please like and share the stream, and please become a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation or channel member. Love you guys, and we'll see you tomorrow. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation.
Please clap.
Why? You're getting nervous, man.
Oh, man, I'm sorry. They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.